Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun. Good morning, everybody. 21st of April. Oh, looks like I had to adjust the camera yesterday, but I'm looking at it. I think we're just fine. Anyways, 21st of April. Not a whole lot of news on the docket. I have to admit, I'm feeling like super tired today. I'm on call this week and I had an on-call alert happen like right as I was going to bed. So I ended up being up a lot later than I wanted to be. Overnight action. So yesterday we took this awesome up move, and as soon as we left, it like completely retraced. So, well, not as soon as we left. There was another leg up that we missed that maybe I should have stuck around, but anyways, went up, came back, and now overnight another move lower. Now, something that's been going on is oil has been like going all cray-cray. So somebody like just completely puked yesterday. So we were at, man, when I was checking it yesterday, we were at like 23, right? But then I think that what happened was all of the retail traders got involved and everybody came in and sold. So I don't know if this down move here in oil is sustainable, but that's going to be a significant part of why the equity indexes are down today. If we come over here and we look at the treasuries, oh, look, they're breaking up above, even that. So not quite to the all-time high, but close. They're up there. They are definitely up there. All right. So that kind of puts us in an interesting spot. Down. But do you really want to sell it? The E-mini is kind of at a support level. May actually see some longs here. And like I said, I'm a little hesitant to read all of that overnight action as negative as the price movement would suggest, because I think that what's happening is you have a lot of people that aren't normally involved in markets freaking out over a clickbait headline and, reading too much into the situation of oil delivery today that is not necessarily significant. So, with all that said, we are getting a little bit of action in the E-mini, but I'm going to set my hands here for a little bit, see what happens. You may get, this is a time of day where they tend to start a move, so we may see an up move that just goes. Oh, Daniel, okay, so thank you so much. So Daniel was telling me yesterday, he just gave us so what does that translate? He gave me some Korean won. Didn't they, by the way, Daniel, I have to ask. Another big story that's going on in the markets. Hold on, I'm getting a cough here. I got the root. No, I'm choking on water. There's a story out there that Kim Jong-il is very sick and dying, and the Korean markets, like the Korean won, went down significantly. Presumably, I would think because they think that with Kim Jong-il out, if he dies, that a peace deal with North Korea is significantly less likely. And I'm wondering, how is the media over there in in South Korea handling that situation? But anyways, Daniel K was talking to us yesterday because we had a really great target and it went right up to our target. And then he turned around and he sold it. And he thanked me for it. And I was like, well, I didn't say to sell it there. But he did. And he made a ton of money off of that one. That was a good trade, boy. And so thank you. Thank you very, very much. That's great. I think I have a couple of things that I want. We've been doing good on the YouTube revenue, just from views, and I have a little bit of lighting here in the back that I want to take care of, so we'll do that. It's all over the news. They're talking about potential refugees and nukes getting into the wrong hands. Really? Do you think that is? Oh wait, I never turned on the text to speech. Do you think that is all that likely, or do you think that that's just kind of like clickbait? That kind of sounds like clickbait. Refugees? Why would there be refugees? Who would be the successor? Who would be Un's successor? Got 3 minutes to the hour here. Who would be his successor? If not Kim Jong-un, who possible heirs to North Korea's throne? Kim Yo-jong's sister. Ah, yes. His son. He has a son that has 3 children. Nephew. Brother. Huh. Oh, it's a sister. I remember hearing about this sister. Whether North Korea's patriarchal elite will support a relatively young woman as the country's next supreme leader is unclear. Donald Trump should be the successor? Good grief, Rocky. Yep, unlikely. I think it's standard news clickbait. Okay, cool. King Beast oil again? You know what? So here's my thought on oil. Let me go back here. I said this, but here's my rule on something like this. Okay, too many people care. Too many people care. When too many people care, you're gonna get fucked every time, man. Every time. If my friends on Facebook, excuse me, if my friends on Facebook are talking about it, that market is, you cannot predict what it's gonna do, and trading it is dumb. The best thing to do, because I'm sure there was a lot of people that thought, oh, hey, let's buy it. Because I saw one guy in chat in our Discord. There's a couple of people trading it. One of them took it short from like 22 to 20, and then it went down to 12, and they're like, well, crap. It's just really, quite literally, unpredictable. It's so crazy. And I say, when your friends on Facebook are talking about the market, don't trade whatever they're talking about. Whatever they're talking about is going to be a complete mess where all of the traders are just getting screwed over. And you don't want to mess with it.
Liz says 안녕하세요.
Oh, was that the name of the girl? That's cool. I'm happy that I immediately recognized those characters as Korean, though. I don't know how to put them together, though. I need to find a better resource for the alphabet. Just like a text thing, list of the symbols to memorize. That's what I need. Okay, so we have come here on the hour. They started out negative. I can't take it here. With the way that this setup is, I'd say that a short here does not really make sense. Yeah, no, definitely does not. They almost came back and went positive on that last hour, which is interesting. I think if I wanted to take a short, maybe I could wait for them to come back down the other way, but I I could take it long actually. Actually, there's lots of things that could tell me that I could potentially take it long. But if I do, I think that I don't want to do it on the hour. So let's just kind of sit and watch. Here's Ace's thing is telling me that they're trying to cross the divide. Man, I just feel sleepy, man. I got to admit, I'm not feeling super amazing because there's this stupid machine at work. Okay, where I'm in site reliability engineering now. I used to do QA the tools, develop QA tools. Now I develop alerting tools. It's always developing internal tools for me. And but because we are attached to IT, everybody in IT is supposed to do 2 weeks of support. So I'm on support. And there's this stupid machine that is always at, and I don't really want to go into why, but it's pretty innocuous. But I still have to go in and check every night. Well, not every night, but it happens a lot, and it's making me, I'm mad about the one last night just because I feel so tired now. It's not like I went to bed that late. It was like 11:30, but I just feel like. There we go. Okay. I can kind of see here, just kind of watching the order flow, that they are definitely. I need to remember when I'm done. I have an indicator that I was testing. One of my level 2 ones that I need to add to the chart afterwards. I shouldn't mess with her right now, though. Oh, I didn't catch that there was a Philadelphia Fed Manufacturing Business Index, negative 96 in April. Jeez. 75 publicly traded firms received coronavirus relief loans meant for small businesses. Ugh. They should give it back.
Rocky X says yesterday you were targeting 2,860 for your trade according to the daily volatility range. Could you explain how you calculate it once you have time?
Yes and no. So the thing is it's so effective. I'm kind of a little bit hesitant to explain the exact specifics of how I do it, because there's a little bit of things about which number you pick and stuff like that if you really want to get into this, you're just going to have to go and game out yourself. But it was not my idea. Gary Rich here in the channel told us about it. It was a Friday, I think 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now, where he talked about it. And the general principle behind it, the stuff that you need to research to figure it out, is the VIX. It's based on the VIX. And basically what we're doing is we're calculating what the daily expected volatility is in the S&P 500 based on the VIX. Okay. I don't get a number until the market opens because I don't have the VIX open right now. So that's kind of where it's kind of like which time I choose and everything like that. But it's basically the VIX divided by 16, right? So that's what you need to get you started on it. Yeah, Bot says go ahead and explain it. I just should do the work. But VIX divided by 16 is how you get the percentage expected volatility. I have a little thing in TradingView. Maybe I could make it. Maybe I could go bro. That's what I should do. I should go bro and sell it to you guys. You could buy it for like $1 or something like that. Because it really is quite, well, yesterday it was quite useful. So I'll show you really quickly here. You can see how yesterday they literally went right to the number. But then overnight, they went right to the number 2. And you can notice that whenever they go over these, that they kind of do crazy things. Yep, until you get the updated number in the morning. So probably, or you're going to get an updated number down here, maybe somewhere around here. And then I think the targets are going to be somewhere down here again. So we could maybe see some continued downside, but I don't know. For the moment, see, this is kind of telling us, hey, that move down was a pretty good move. It's you have to have quite something else to go beyond that. Now they do go beyond that. No, don't get me wrong. Let's go find some days where they see there's a day where they went beyond it. When you get into some of these really crazy days in March, you definitely get this, especially the ones where we were like breaking the circuit breakers and everything like that, you know. Then you had some of these sort of stuff. So I wouldn't hold it as a hard and soft, hard rule, but kind of the gist of it is that when you cross those lines, the options have essentially mispriced things, and some option traders are losing money when that happens. And that's why you see the particular reactions that you do there. There's definitely a much better way of figuring things out than, like, say, pivots, isn't it? You can calculate from the VIX closing number from the days prior to use your overnight ranges until you get the updated number in the morning. Oh yeah, I could do that. So yeah, that's the gist of it. In other words, I was saying, like, which price you use, where you choose to anchor it, is you have to experiment. I'm still experimenting with it, and I'm doing some back testing and doing some data, but that's the part that I don't think I should share. Where do you get the VIX number from? I'm just getting the 5 minutes delayed one on TradingView, but if you have CQG data, actually I think even if you have Rithmic data, you can get the VIX for like $7 a month. Oh yes. I've been working on a top secret indicator with John, and I need to send that over. So you have to I had to make a change to the older version because it didn't have the properties set correctly. There you go. I literally haven't even loaded it into a chart, so I don't know what it will do if I load it into a chart, but it compiles. That's the thing that's so dumb. Is like yesterday, I'm like, okay, I spent a lot of time with the baby. That's kind of like the thing that I'm doing in the evening when I have free time, and watching the baby while my wife actually goes and does something. And so I watched the baby, and then I was like, well, I still want to do this thing really quick. So I came in and programmed it up as quickly as possible. And then I was done, and I was like, okay, time to go to bed. It's time to go to bed. So I go to bed. It's like, close to 10. And then I'm all cooled down and ready to fall asleep. And 10:30, 10:45 comes along or something like that. And an alert goes off at 11, so then I have to spend 30 minutes doing that. And then it took me a long time to fall asleep after that. So I don't think I fell asleep until like midnight. Okay, well, here comes the short is really pushing down there, man. That looks like a pretty solid short. I don't know if it would like to fade it back there, but it does not meet the qualification. Does not meet it. Okay, so that bar closed below the ATR range, so that's a stop out right there.
Daniel K says West Coast.
Oh, the RRSP is a Canadian version of it?
Bot says East Coast, 90 miles north of Toronto.
Oh, I didn't realize that you were that. I knew that you were close to Toronto, but I didn't realize that you were that far away from it. I thought that you were like literally in Toronto because you talk about. I remember you talking about this story where your kid was like sick or misbehaving or something like that, and so you took him to the office and you made it just the most unfun time ever, and then you never had that problem again. And so and it sounded like from that story that you were like in an office in Toronto. So I thought that you were really, really close. Hmm. I wanted to buy the treasury. 17.5 wouldn't have been a bad spot, I must say. Okay, so I am getting a lot of signs down in here of, we say, oh man, excuse me, price discovery. That, though, kind of suggests that we need to be cautious. I used to have an office in downtown Toronto before I retired in 2009. Oh, and that's about when you were trading, right? Oh, I need to just turn the auto read on. That's what I should do. There we go.
Bot says at the corner of Bay and Queen, 65 Queen East across from City Hall.
Ooh. And what kind of business was it again? New York Fed receives no bids for overnight repo operation. Very interesting.
Bot says junior oil and gas exploration.
Oh, well, so then why don't you trade oil? If you know a bunch of stuff about oil, that's funny. If that's what I had did for a living, and then I decided to go into trading, I would have tried oil. Maybe he did try oil. I gotta tell you,
Bot says lol.
Oil is hard to trade, man. maybe that's a good idea. So there they're doing it again. Another outside bar on the 1 minute chart. Hmm. I have to say, the action on the tape this morning is much more constrained than it was yesterday at this time. Wouldn't you agree? Mm. I was thinking I've been doing research for stocks, and one of the things that I want is a good technology company. And Microsoft is one of the companies that I was really interested in because they have really good cloud offerings now, and I see a positive future for their their cloud operations. But I'm wondering because it is a significant part of the S&P. Um, like, here's a picture I'm just seeing here on Twitter. That's why I'm thinking about it. And they're showing that all of these companies have a larger weighting than like literally everything else. And I'm kind of thinking, well, they might be a good company, but I don't know if they're a good fit for me. I think they're too big and too popular. Need a something better. I'm thinking more 5G ish. More 5G. I want a technology company like a network pro. I have a list, but I'm not going to share with you my list. Hmm. They did extend the last pivot, but only just barely, and they didn't get to that low. They would have had every reason to do it too. I think we could get a trade still, but it would have to really come up aggressively. I do think eventually on the stock side, I want to buy an oil company. If I don't already have too much weighting in nuclear, but I think that if I get into the nuclear energy, it wouldn't be so much an energy stock as it would be materials and construction. So I do think I want to do oil at some point, but it might be like a year or more before a trade like that would really make sense with what's happening in oil right now. $15 right now. Oh, I don't think I updated it.
Bots says yeah, people that owned Apple back before Steve Jobs reacquired the company would disagree with that type of thinking. Too
Too
popular to own.
popular to own? Well, was it that big of a stock though? Like I'm more worried about the size of it, you know? I don't know if that's quite the same situation. It would maybe be more like let's say mm, what was the last crazy thing that happened before the trade war stuff? Maybe like the temper tantrum. It'd be like, should you buy Apple after the taper tantrum? I think if you bought Apple, you would be up, but I don't think that you would generate a whole lot of alpha off of
Bots
it.
says shop.
Okay, let me look them up. I'll do Yahoo Finance. I think I need a better. Maybe I should look at the research that my broker provides. Shopify? Well, that's not bad. Wow, they're expensive though. 6 months. So how much are they down? Oh, they're not down at all. They're up. They're up, up, up. They're one of the few benefactors of all this.
Bot says big time up.
It's a big time up. I'm thinking because I have the money there, but I haven't done anything with it. So here's kind of the weird game with that, right? Is like in Japan, they've had this thing where they printed a lot of money and then nobody did anything with it. They just hoarded it all. And I'm sitting here looking at myself and I'm like, well, you're hoarding it, Seth. You're not actually buying stocks with it, not yet. Doesn't that make you the same? So then it's like, well, should you be getting in today? Well, we could average in for sure, but there's just things about the market that don't seem right to me. I don't know if that means that we're going to have like another huge down push, but I'm just not convinced that where we are at the moment in ES is like a good tactical position to be taking a significant position. I think at the very least that the E-mini
Boom Baby says Corona Chan will make another pass. Second wave will be a doozy.
Well, that could be. So I posted this on Facebook the other day and it's really weird to me what people respond to and what they don't. I would have thought that my not on my, I didn't post it on the page, so not you guys, but my raver friends and family, I thought that they would react to it because they had been talking about this stuff so much, but they didn't really react to it. But I have a theory, because why do we have, like this study in California said that the coronavirus was much more widespread than believed, but that's still only like 4%, and that is not herd immunity. So if we're not at herd immunity, then why are we seeing cases decline? Well, one reason could be that it's just all in New York, and New York is the one that's really seeing the decline, and we don't really have numbers for New York. It could be that those numbers are just flat out wrong and that a lot more people actually have it than we believe. But I have another theory that I think we should consider, okay? It's the weather. I always said that you'll have a little bit of a breakout, but then the summer will come along and kill it. The heat hurts the transmission rate so much that it would probably die off. And you didn't really see that up in the Northeast because it was very rainy, but pretty much everywhere else,
or maybe
it's
just all bullsh **T.
I don't think that you can look at. I mean, it's always moving. Before it was, well, if it's all bullcrap, then why are they having this problem in China? And there was a reason for it to be like that in China. So then we say, well, if it's all bullshit, then why did we see what happened in Italy? Okay, well, there's maybe some unique things about Italy. They have an old population.
Baby says Stanford study was highly flawed. Not random. People with symptoms also were likely responding to get a free test.
Yeah, I don't think that number tells us what, but that's the thing, is like that study, I don't think that really counters the point, right? Because what you're saying is that the number of people that actually have it is not as high as the study says, right? That's the way that the error in that would go, is more people that actually have it would be likely to want to get tested for it, right? So you're saying that the actual antibody immunity percentage is much lower than that Stanford study says, which just makes the divergence more confusing. If we're not at herd immunity, then why are cases dropping? Are social distancing measures that effective? Or I say, maybe it's the weather. It's the weather. It's killing it everywhere except for in the Northeast, and really particularly in New York, where it's able to live in the subway. And everywhere else, especially when you get into the South, like Florida and Texas, where there was some real concern with for Florida. But so far, nothing too bad has happened, and they're already opening things back up in Florida. Why? So my guess is it's got to be the weather. Now, here's the thing: if it's the weather, this is the important part. If it was the weather, then that means that when we get to the fall, we won't have herd immunity, and the weather will get bad again, and it will spread again. And then the second wave in the fall would be extremely troublesome. And we really, our efforts should be focused right now on...
ENS says if it was the weather, then why supposed breakouts in tropical climates, for example, Thailand, etc.?
Well, I don't think that there really have been significant breakouts in those countries. So, let's just come here and look at that. Okay.
Boom Baby says cases are dropping because we are all hiding. Lol. Weather could be a factor. We'll find out. Like Spanish flu from 1918, the second wave will be worse.
Okay, so there's a breakout in Ecuador and Chile, but it's only 133 deceased. I mean, when you look at the list, right? It's all northern countries. You really, until you get to Peru. So, of course, the weather's not going to completely prevent it. But kind of... Another thing, another one is, where are they? Australia. So when we first talked about the weather and people said, well, the weather doesn't come. I mean, of course, the weather's not going to prevent all cases. But look at Australia. The whole country, 71 people deceased. And they've had it about as long as the United States has. I think there's pretty good evidence to show that the transmission rate is significantly less in hot weather. And we haven't even really gotten into really, truly hot weather yet. Okay, well, there's a new low. This might just be an hour where I don't get a signal. If I'm doing this right. Now, another thing, Boom Baby, that got to remember is that the reason the second wave in the Spanish flu was so deadly was because
Gary
it
Rich
mutated.
says, well, good morning, crude observers.
Yeah. You guys want to pull up a crude chart? I think what you guys are saying here is that we should check out crude. We should pull up crude on a DOM. I think I actually have. Yeah, it's there. Cool. And I think they'll even let me see more levels, right? CQG will let you see like up to 100, I think. Yeah. Bada boom. Where can we put it though? I guess we could just leave it down
says
here.
people need to stop getting tested. We do that and we can curb the mass panic. Getting tested is pointless. If you get sick enough to require hospitalization, there's a higher chance you're gonna. Uzi Knesset says die and a test isn't going to change that.
Yeah. You know what? Oops, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the snapshot. There we go.
ENS says totally agree. Gary Rich says what a ride that May Crude contract experienced.
Yeah. You weren't involved in any of that, were you, Gary? I was kind of surprised when I went into our Discord chat. They were definitely talking about it. And some people did come in later and talk about some trades, but it looked like in general that most of our guys weren't touching it.
Uzi Knesset says I totally don't understand why people are approaching dealing with COVID differently than anything else. You catch it like you catch anything else, you mitigate it like you would anything else. Uzi Knesset says but for some reason, people are thirsting for the anxiety over this.
Well, because it is more deadly than other things. Like if you have any kind of complicating factor, like particularly if you're obese, it turns out you'll have a reasonable chance of just straight up dying from it. It's still like a low number. It's still only like 1% or whatever.
Jokel says more deadly and more contagious.
It is. I don't think that there's a single piece of data that we have. I don't think that you can just compare it to the flu. And the thing is that how do I put this? It's kind of weird because it seems like that it can be bad. It's not necessarily guaranteed to be bad, but it's like the right circumstances, and this thing just like spirals out of control, and then tons of people die.
That guy says actually USA death rate from COVID is between 4 and 5%, 40 to 50x greater death rate than the flu.
Well,
Uzi Knesset says it is more deadly, sure. But how does avoiding getting COVID differ from avoiding getting anything else? Is COVID transmitted in a way that's different from any other respiratory infection? That guy says anyone still walking around claiming COVID as harmless is either severely brainwashed or misguided.
So when you're talking
Gary
about
Rich
the death
says
rate,
read Fauci interview with Vanity Fair. Yikes.
So when it comes to the death rate, you got to remember that when you're looking at a flu death rate, which is somewhere around like 0.4 or something like that, you're talking about like the total number of cases. And when they get the total number of cases that a flu has, a lot of that is statistically generated and is not actually based off of case numbers. Whereas when you're talking about coronavirus, we're only talking about cases compared to the people that die, which means that people that get sick enough to go to the hospital actually get one of the very few limited tests that are available and get tested and confirmed that 5% of those people are dead. So those two numbers are calculated the same, are different ways, and you cannot compare them. The true death rate for coronavirus is probably closer to 6%. Okay, it's probably closer to 6%. But here's the thing: you got to remember this is the thing that makes it different. The thing that makes it that we have to treat it differently. The hospitalization rate per confirmed case is like 10%. The number of people that have to be hospitalized to deal with this virus is much higher than the flu. Much higher. That targets certain vulnerable population that if they get it, you have got to get them on a respirator or they're not going to make it. And it's almost like I get the insinuations that it's genetically engineered, because I don't think you could engineer something to tax a country any better, right? If you handle it and you put all of your resources into it, then the death rate is like a bad flu season. What we're getting right now in the United States looks like a bad flu season. 30, 40,000 deaths, right? But if you don't do anything about it, then it's a complete disaster. Like Italy. What happened in Italy was really bad because they overwhelmed the healthcare system, and then the death rates skyrockets. Macy, good morning.
Gary Rich says the models by the epidemiologist are off by a factor of 10. They estimated too big.
Yeah. I gotta wonder. There's this thing that I'm seeing where it's like, um, trust the experts. Of course, if I'm talking about what are the correct measures to mitigate a coronavirus, then I'm gonna listen to an epidemiologist. Um, and if I want to kind of calculate how bad it could potentially be, I certainly would listen to an epidemiologist. But you would think that an epidemiologist would be the first person to tell you, okay, here's the number that I'm getting, here's how I get it, and here's why there's a really good chance that it's not going to be correct because there's all of this information that we don't actually know. But they don't do that, do they? They just go on television and they say, well, if we don't do anything, there's going to be 2 million deaths. And then we're like, 50,000. This is kind of like, it really is like these guys uh, don't have the foresight to explain the limits of their knowledge to us, which kind of makes me feel like that it's not, they're not doing it because they're experts. They're doing it because to influence people, right? Like you as a country know that you have to do social distancing. And if people knew the real stats off of it, they wouldn't do it, and then we would have a vastly higher death rate. You know what I mean?
Uzi Knesset says, would you listen to an epidemiologist who tells you that our approach to this has been horribly wrong? Because in my experience lately, those epidemiologists aren't real epidemiologists.
I'm just, apparently universal house arrest is the only option. Yeah, well, so let's back up because we talked about this yesterday, right? There's kind of this thing where some states have been overreacting to it. Like in Michigan, there's this whole thing where it's like if you do a ski jet on the on the lake, that is considered not essential. But if you have a sailboat, then it's essential. Or there was some states where if you wanted to buy seeds and start your own garden, because, you know, if you're concerned about an economic calamity and being able to grow your food is maybe a good idea. Okay? Not essential, can't buy it. Right? And so some of these states have just gone drunk on the power, I feel. And so I you know, I totally understand people fighting against it. You know what I mean? I'm going to make, I know that this is super small and y'all can't read that, but hey, it's oil. We're not actually trading oil, so it's going to be small. All right. It's going to be small so that we can see where it is. Okay. Anyways, but again, I think all you got to do is look at New York to say, okay, like there is real concern here, right? A lot of people died in New York, and if they had not flattened the curve, it would have been a real disaster. You can just imagine if it had hit all at once, and if we're not even a tenth of the way through this, can you imagine what would have happened if really everybody came in? They would have slammed the healthcare system, and a lot of people would have died. There's no question about that. No question about that. It's not even like, oh, we're missing some data and things like that. That you need to respond to it in some form, or your healthcare system will be overwhelmed and you'll have a high death rate. I don't think that's questionable anymore.
RJ Wheels says New York didn't do it soon enough. Specifically the city of.
Well, they were telling people to go out and encouraging them to go out before Donald Trump really came in and was like, okay, we really do need to take this seriously. Mm-hmm. Anyways. And there's also this other issue of like, okay, epidemiologists made like all of these predictions and then they didn't end up happening. Well, we did flatten the curve and the rate of transmission is significantly less than what they were using in all of those estimates. So of course it will be off. But you know what's kind of interesting is 538, they did a poll. They asked a number of epidemiologists and prediction scientists what the numbers should be. And up until, the number of cases starting going down in New York, all of those epidemiologists were actually undershooting their estimates. On that one, they all undershot their estimates. And then as time went on, they got closer and closer to it.
Gary Rich says I predict recalling the politicians in those states with bad policy and implementation. Just wait, it will come up by those citizens. That guy says it, RJ, that's a result of lack of testing. No testing equals no cases. RJ Wheel says if you compare to Washington State and California.
Yeah, well, different areas of the country have definitely been impacted differently. You notice that the southern states, none of them really hit that hard. None of them really hit that hard. But my point was, so going back to what all started this, if a lot of it is the weather and we're not even close to herd immunity, then that means that we're in for a real doozy in the fall if we don't prepare for it now, which means that we need to, if we ease, first of all, we're going to have to ease restrictions. We need to keep that case load high, not so that it's overwhelming the system, but so that we're developing herd immunity, so that we develop as much herd immunity as we can before the fall. And then number two is that we're going to have to replenish all of the supplies and masks and all of these other things. We can't turn around and say, oh, okay, well, we have enough ventilators, we have enough masks, we don't need the National Production Act and all of those sorts of things anymore. No, they need to keep doing it, because if that's true, we haven't hit the herd immunity, then the fall could be much worse. Right? And you don't want to have to shut everything down again in the fall. Double whammy. Ugh. And it would be happening right at the election, right? Like it would be starting to get bad again right at the election. But that's another thing that if this is the case, probably you're going to see people say, it's like, oh, we had a second wave, it's all Donald Trump's fault. When the reality is right now we're already looking at it and we're saying, there's probably not a whole lot we can do to prevent a second wave. All we can do is prepare for it as high as possible so that we don't have to add as many onerous restrictions. Okay, let's just take a note of where the ES was. R factor in the southern state isn't exclusively lower than the rest of the country. Kentucky, West Virginia, and Arkansas have high R values. Arkansas also doesn't have shelter in place. Well, yeah. So really, the shelter in place one that you got to look at, I think, is South Dakota, right? It's interesting to me though with South Dakota. Because they didn't do a shelter in place and they had a breakout that's pretty bad. But the breakout is like exclusively from one place, right? So it kind of shows you if you don't add the restrictions, what happens. But I don't think that's really the question that people on the right are arguing. I think the question that people on the right are arguing, at least the reasonable people on the right, there are definitely a lot of people out there that think that the whole thing is just a hoax and they're crazy and you're never going to get through to those people. But I think the smart people are just saying, are the restrictions that were put in place actually appropriate? And I've seen a lot of things that well, just here in my state, in Salt Lake, They have like a tip line for you to tattle on your neighbors if they're not quarantining themselves enough. This is so ridiculous. But then they come but then everybody says, well, Utah doesn't have shelter in place. So it's like, well, ain't nobody here in Utah just, going around living their life normal, okay? I haven't left the house in like 3 weeks now, except for to go and get food. Pretty much every reasonable business in Utah is shut down, even though we don't have a statewide shelter-in-place order. I just don't think that you have to go full dictator to, slow the spread. That's all. State-sponsored snitching is tight. Throwback to the Gestapo days. And now South Dakota has one of the lowest population densities in the nation. Well, that's true too. But they still had a bad breakout, didn't they? But that's just kind of, I think that what's happening is the media is picking up on like one technical little word. Has the state issued a shelter-in-place order? I guarantee you, Utah does not have a shelter-in-place order, but everybody here in Utah is sheltering in place. Everybody here in Utah is sheltering in place, and everybody is a lot of people are very upset because they think that they shouldn't be. They think that all of the businesses should be encouraged to open back up again. But I think what you're going to see happen here, especially if it has to do with weather, then what's going to happen is all the guys in Florida going to go and start living their life normally, and they're all going to be happy, and their economy is going to be booming, and they won't really be having a huge problem with the virus. They'll just be handling it just fine. And everybody else is going to be like, well, wait a second. They did the wrong thing and they're benefiting from it, and they're going to be very upset. And this is something that I see in politics all the time. The average person, for some reason, always miscalculates in politics because they assume that current trends will continue, right? So right now, I think the polling says that 60% of people support shelter-in-place measures, but you're already seeing some Republicans changing, and then if those areas that are opening back up, like Texas and Florida, start doing well, you're going to see that number flip very, very quickly. And the Democrats have invested themselves so heavily in this. So, there was a poll yesterday that said that 60% of Democrats blame the COVID-19 crisis more so on Donald Trump than on China, which is patently ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. But that's 60% of Democrats. 60% of Democrats. Right? There's just all of these things that don't really match up, and then you say, oh, well, that's the way it is, and it's going to stay that way? Probably not. It's just like any other data, they mean revert. Probably you will see that more and more people come towards that we need to ease restrictions. CNN bots, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. There's definitely there's that even for coronavirus that there's a partisan divide kind of tells you that there's something wrong. Of course I'm a Republican, so can I really speak neutrally on that? Probably not. But from my perspective, I look at what Nancy Pelosi is doing in Congress, and I have to say, well, what Democrats are the ones that are resisting coming together here?
ENS says here in the EU things are opening up again. People were self-quarantining but nothing like it's portrayed in the media. People out and about like before. Just closed down businesses.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not gonna read that one, Gary. Oh man, no. It seems to me that the social distancing is way more. Oh, excuse me. Good grief. Good grief. We have to see what is going. But here's the other side of this, right? If you're seeing a consistent downtrend in new cases over the course of 14 days, you got to ease restrictions. You got to ease restrictions. That means that based on the current trajectory that you have, that you're over the hill at that point, that the number of cases that you got are going to continue to go down and down and down until you change the equation. And if you continue to allow it to go at that slow pace, then you're extending the quarantine unnecessarily. You're extending it unnecessarily if you don't ease restrictions when you start to get the stuff that says that you can. Is that, I don't know any better way to put that. If when you start to see a decline in cases, you have to ease restrictions in order to, because you've flattened the curve and you've avoided the disaster. Good. Now what you need to do is you need to reduce the economic impact, which means that you want the measures to be taken out as quickly as possible, and until you and what the declining cases is telling you is that you have room to ease the restrictions, so you should do it so that you get back on the path to economic recovery faster, and you get the herd immunity faster. Because like I said, I think that I really think that a fall wave is a real concern. I'm concerned that what's going to happen is you're going to have states that come in and say, we're not trying to flatten the curve, we're trying to crush the curve. And they're not going to ease restrictions at all. And there's not going to be any herd immunity. And then maybe they ease restrictions after pretty much everybody else does. And then the fall comes, they haven't developed as much herd immunity, and they get hit really hard in the fall. Or they just have to completely shelter in place in the fall, and that's very, very devastating economically, like kicking them while they're down. So that, I think that that's a real concern that people aren't talking about. And this is where I was kind of trying to go with the experts thing, is like, yeah, experts are experts, but you got to realize their limitations. You've got to realize where their limitations are. I might actually get a long signal here, but it's going to be like during the open. I don't know if I want to mess with that. Okay, I'm going to put you guys on reading. I'm going to get some more water, all right?
That guy says let's ease restrictions, but when shelter in place ends, there's likely to be an outbreak from the states that chose not to shelter in place. This is what could lead to a second nationwide outbreak.
Let's see here. Let's ease restrictions, but when shelter in place ends, there's likely to be an outbreak from the states that chose not to shelter in place. That makes zero sense, that guy. That makes zero sense. The states that chose not to shelter in place either A, didn't really need to, or B, has more herd immunity, right? If you're going to have a second wave, the people that are going to get hit the hardest are going to be the ones that had the least restrictions. Okay, I could buy it there. Should I really be doing this though? At like, fine. And I think that it's probably a foregone conclusion that there's going to be a fall wave. It's just a question of whether the fall wave is like really something that we have to shut things down for. So let's not call it a second nationwide breakout. Let's call it a second nationwide shelter in place. That's what we need to avoid. Although perhaps it's unavoidable.
Michael XC says they should keep large events banned like churches, sports, etc. for a lot longer. That guy says you have a lack of testing. You have no idea how bad the numbers are in these non-shelter states.
All I know is that they're going to be better than the ones that completely sheltered. Which is to mean there's going to be more people with immunity. Right? Like if we come through this, that's setting a very low bar.
That guy says that's setting a very low bar.
From my understanding of what you're saying makes no logical sense.
That guy says shelter in place doesn't work if everyone doesn't do it.
Yeah, okay, but what you're saying makes zero logical sense, okay? If there are some states that sheltered in place and there are some states that didn't, the states that didn't shelter in place are going to have more herd immunity, which means that if we have another outbreak, the ones that did not shelter in place are going to fare better in that second wave. But of course, that would also depend on what they do in the second wave. So if we assume there's a second wave and then everybody shelters in place during the second wave or does the things that are appropriate and all of the states do it exactly the same, the states that didn't have the shelter in place the first time around are going to do better because they will have more herd immunity. Herd immunity is not that useful unless it's 80%, I thought. So I'm actually starting to learn that there's like different levels of it. And even a herd immunity of 30% decreases the transmission rate noticeably. But you're not like, so like if you're an old person and you're worried about dying from catching it, you're not really safe to go out until herd immunity is like 80%. Okay. But for the rest of us, the herd immunity thing is the target. Because really, that's the only way that it ends. You can't shelter in place until there's a vaccine. That's just not economically viable. People will starve before that happens. Saying it also takes a few years. I don't know. So I was just saying that I don't have to go back and find where I was reading that, but even if you get to like 30% herd immunity, that can be significant. Well, I got to tell you, that was a pretty good open drive. I see him fighting it, though. The solution is opt-in tracking, and yeah. I mean, really, the thing that I think is unfortunate is that um, from the evidence that I've seen, the most effective thing is testing and tracking, or what do we call it? Contact tracing. So testing as many everybody that thinks that they have it, and then if they do have it, asking who have you had contact with in the last, you know, 2 weeks or whatever, and then testing all of those people too. That's how South Korea was able to keep their numbers so low. That appears to be the thing that works so well. And in Western countries, we just don't have the materials to test them as much as we would need to. In my opinion, President Trump is not doing with the virus in the U.S. So here's the thing I think is funny about the whole Donald Trump thing, because Democrats, there was a poll that said that Donald Trump was more to blame. There's a story about it on Hot Air, which is one of the blogs that I read. That 60% of them thought that Donald Trump was more to blame than China. Okay, listen, 100% is China is to blame. Okay, none of this would be happening if China had been honest with everybody. Okay, if China had been honest with everybody, the problems that we've had in the Western nations with this would not have happened. In fact, we probably would have shut things down sooner, and it may never have gotten outside of China. Okay, what was it that Donald Trump did that was so bad? I guess maybe he could have implemented the shelter in place orders sooner. It was like a week between when they started doing it in California and Portland and when Donald Trump actually came in and said that you should do it. So I don't know if that's really a significant factor. The question is, like, where is the error that was Donald Trump's fault? Okay, because I don't think you can blame him for the testing. There are some things that he could have done between January and March, but even then, I don't think that you would have the kind of testing that we need. The issue is that it would have been years to correctly prepare for this in the way that people seem to think the government should be prepared for something like this. It should have been years of preparation. Years of preparation. You can't blame Donald Trump for that. So what is the thing that Donald Trump did that's so bad? Well, he had a news conference and he said something in the news conference that I wasn't too happy about. That's what I see. That's what I see. I really, especially, and here's the thing, like I said, things change. Right now, we're kind of right at the cusp of the peak infections. In New York, it has passed. In a lot of other places, it's not. Oh, yeah, I need to get rid of that. So, people are reacting to that. What are people going to believe when it's the 4th of July and pretty much all of the shelter in place orders have been rescinded? People are going to think very, very differently about the world then. And there might be a lot more people saying, well, we overreacted in this way, and we shouldn't have done this. And maybe when we come around again, we need to change some things, Okay, so there was the sellers taking their move. 64. Numbers from China were well understood to not include deaths that were occurred at home and not include asymptomatic cases, so that's no excuse for Western countries to not even bother to prepare. Also, another obvious thing was they quarantined 60 million people and shut down their entire economy. Yeah. Well, so I'm just going back and thinking about it, right? We really didn't start talking about this until after Martin Luther King Day, so in February, like February 18th, somewhere around there. You know, the stuff before that really wasn't a national discussion. Like I can go back and look on our stream, and we were not talking about it until after Martin Luther King Day. Back then, what were we talking about? Impeachment, right? So I think the amount of time that we had to prepare is a little bit. Sure, China should have been more honest, but the whole world knew what was going on in January. Nothing was shut down. I don't think that they really did it. I don't think that, for one, well, so let me explain why that's where that's not necessarily true. So the big issue is the thing that China lied about and is really truly problematic is that they had been having cases way back in December and they didn't really say anything about it. So here we are, we're seeing a breakout in China in January. And I think that the majority of people were thinking, well, this is something that's just happening. We shut our borders now and we'll be okay. Donald Trump shut the borders early. That helped, but it didn't prevent it because by that point, people had already come through because it had been around a lot longer than they had thought. If China had been honest, and had properly alerted people to this and had been on top of their shit, then we would have shut the borders in December. We would have shut the borders before Christmas and it never would have gotten out. Never would have gotten out. And we would have had better numbers. Which, I don't know. Like, this, like when you're talking about preparation, you can say, I don't think that it was the case that the government, like, didn't prepare at all. But, like, there's a limit on what you can do at that point, right? That was the local authorities in the beginning of the mass in China. That might be the case. I don't know. And then, yeah, how would the government tell people to shut down in January? You're absolutely right. There is no way that they would have gone for it. No way. In the United States, nobody would have been willing to shelter in place in January. And this is where you're ignoring the fact that your State Department knew about this back in November. So that particular story that you're talking about, John, has been misconstrued. That's a clickbait headline. The State Department actually came out after that story came out, and they said, no, that's not completely accurate. They were talking about stuff like that in November. Well, they did not know that there was like a legit breakout that needed to be prepared for in November. How hard is it to make gowns? You'd be surprised. So again, on these ones, my understanding of it, at least. So like right now in the U.S., like my wife is making masks. That's one of the things. So like making masks, but she's making masks out of cotton. So the reason that she makes them out of cotton is because you can put that in the sanitation things that they have in the hospital, but it's not actually the best material to prevent the spread. It's not as effective as the surgical masks that they've got, right? The clothing that they wear in the medical facilities, it's materials that are certain materials. So it's not like these materials just like pop out of nowhere, right? So you're coming in and you decide that suddenly you need a ton of this stuff. It takes several months for that to happen. And then when you add on top of it that we sent all of that to China and China was shut down, only so much that they could have done. Even if they had started preparing for those things earlier, I don't think that we would have avoided the supply shortages on those kinds of materials. No way. No way. So let's take this from another, make second-rate gowns. Yeah, well, yeah, you do. But then at what point do you realize that you have to make second-rate gowns? Right? See? And here's the issue that I have with this argument. Because we can argue that we should have done it. Obviously, with the benefit of afterthought, we can say those sorts of things. Okay? We didn't do it. But here's the thing. Nobody did it. Quite frankly, the United States response, when you look at it compared to all other Western countries, we've actually done pretty good. Okay, the worst, the places like France and Belgium have been hit way harder than the United States have, significantly so. Anyways, significantly so. So to try and blame it on, it just doesn't really make sense. But like everyone was saying, this was known in January that us in European countries needed to be prepared. I don't think that that's true. I really don't think that that is true. I mean, maybe some conspiracy theorists were saying that this should have been a thing, and they're always saying that. But I don't think that anybody really seriously in policy was saying that. Obviously, it wasn't on their radar or they would have done it. The end of January when the scale, that's false. Sorry, Michael. I've gone through, because I had that argument with somebody, and that's not true. Literally, none of us heard about this. Like, I guess if you're reading some newspapers or what, but I did not know about it until after Martin Luther King Day. I went back and I tried to find when on the stream, when we were talking about it, when the markets was aware of it. We straight up were not aware until the Monday after Martin Luther King Day. U.S. media was not talking about it. And it appears that not a whole lot of people in government were really talking about it either. One thing I can count on, markets price risk accordingly. Well, government will always mess it up. Yeah, probably. If you read the South China Morning Post and Reuters. Well, yeah, but back then the headline that you were getting from China was there's been a small outbreak of some disease. Okay. But what you didn't have was this is how deadly it is, and these are the things that we have to do, and we have to right? It wasn't until China was shutting things down over there that we started hearing about it. Before that, it was like, why should you be paying attention to that story anyways? Like, do you realize that headlines like that come out literally every day? And if you were to go through and move heaven and earth into response every time that you saw a headline like that in the U.S. media on what is essentially rumor and clickbait interest stories, like, are you kidding me? Like, there's a certain threshold at which you have to decide that something is serious or not. And I'm saying that nobody really realized what that point was until President's Day. So, from President's Day until, like, what, the beginning of March, when Donald Trump came out and said, okay, we need to shelter in place and all of that stuff, okay? That is the time period that you're talking about where we're saying, the administration didn't do enough. And you have to ask, what could the administration have done in that time period? What could any Western country have done in that time period that would have made a significant difference? I just don't see it. But by the 20th of January, well, like I said, that was the point at which there was data to suggest that it was actually a story. Okay. No, not by the 20th of January, President's Day. It was like February. Right? Or sorry, Martin Luther King Day. Martin Luther King Day. It was February. Oh, it was January 18th. Sorry, I take that back. It was January 18th. Okay, so from January 18th, so the month or so between January 18th and like February 28th or whatever, when Donald Trump started saying stuff, like, that's the time period that you're talking about. Now, January 18th is the day. So I'm saying it's unreasonable. It would have been unreasonable for any government to have been responding to this before January 18th. They might have known, like, they might have read stories about it, but it would just be a story. There was no way to have known that it would turn into this at that point until January 18th. Sure, but they weren't until March. So when did Donald Trump issue order? When did that happen? Trump. Oh, there's a story out today on NPR about it. Yeah, so in December 31st, so here's what I'm saying. This is kind of what I was getting at, right? This was all going around in December. And it wasn't until the end of December that they said anything. And they didn't say, oh, there's an outbreak. They said, oh, well, we have an unknown case of pneumonia. Okay. 18th. Okay, so the 18th was when we started hearing about it. 21st was when we had cases in the United States. And then oh, wow. They formed the coronavirus task force. Oh, no, that's not. When was it when they put Pence in charge? I seem to recall it being sometime in February. Okay, CDC begins shipping test kits for coronavirus to select labs in February 5th. Trump names Vice President Pence to lead the coronavirus response. Okay. So there was literally a month between January 18th and February 26th where you can look at it and you can say that the administration didn't do X, Y, and Z. Okay? So let's just start with that. Okay? So where were the failures? Okay? And there's really two failures that we've had with the response in the United States. One is testing, and one is procuring all of the materials. Okay? So, do you not think that they were procuring materials during all that time? It actually looks like we read a couple of things just on that timeline that suggested that they were. But we had this testing regime. We had this testing regime thing in place, and that prevented us from being able to do the tests that we wanted. Right? Okay, so was that one Donald Trump's fault? No. Was it they they didn't realize what was going on until it was too late. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. So that's number one in that month. And then the number two is, could they give the hospitals enough materials? So probably on that one, I need to do more research. But I'm just going to say that there's only so much that you can do about that in a month. So to say that it was all like Donald Trump's fault is just kind of ridiculous. But then this comes back into the two really the most effective counter arguments that I think are for that is, number one, we did better than other Western countries. We did better than other Western countries. So their response really wasn't all that bad. And number two, we avoided the big bad thing. We have yet to have had a hospital capacity reached. So the disaster never happened. Okay, getting some good up action right here. I'm kind of liking this. Monetary assistance was also a massive failure, handing out trillions to large corporations while leaving small businesses and working class high-end dry. We'll blame Congress for that one, dude. I can't. There has been some trouble administrating the program. This is where I go back into this whole thing that is like, whenever you're in extraordinary circumstances, there's going to be mistakes and problems. You know what I mean? So, Shake Shack gave their loan back, actually. I read that yesterday. They gave their loan back. The same failed politicians were the ones shorting the markets. That's fake news. The senators that were being that they're talking about, at least the one that was most prominent, has a statement, and he made it with his financial advisors. They say that they made all of those for him, that he was not the one that came in and said, oh, we need to sell the market short and all of that. He had financial advisors that were savvy and started getting out back then. And he had nothing to do with it. Besides, I think that we're again, January 18th is the cutoff day, right? January 18th is the point at which you could have said, I want to short the market. You could have done that back then. We can always count on socialists out there. You have no clue what you're talking about, dude. You are starting to take it a little bit beyond the trading, right? Because when we're talking about coronavirus, that's certainly relevant to the markets. But trying to talk about, when you're starting to get that ideological, we're kind of going off the rails a little bit for sure. Look, China lied. End of discussion. Totally, right? They lied. There's no question about it. Do you see these stories about the guys in the UK basically saying, like, China is going to pay for this one way or another? They totally lied. I'm liking this move right here, guys. I'm really liking it. So what do we get? 2805. 2805 is my target. These things matter when trading oil, to be honest. Look at oil or any retail company stock. No, you're right. You're right. And in this specific situation, you support the swamp, big bloated, inefficient policies. Yeah. Listen. I've spent my entire adult life studying markets and how markets work. There's literally not been a day that has gone by since I graduated high school that I have not been looking at markets and politics and figuring out what the impacts of those things are on the world. And if there's one thing that I have learned, okay, that can give you an edge in life, in the world, okay, is that people that make money for a reason, and there's things that they know. And when they are coming out and they support certain policies, it's because those are the policies that make money. And you have the regular Joe Schmo that, for whatever reason, envy in many cases, when the business community disagrees with the general public about a particular issue, the business community is almost always right. And if you side with the business community, that is one of the easiest trades that you can make, because you have plenty of stupid guys on retail trying to fade the pros when the pros are telling everybody what's going to happen. No question about it. So yeah, when it comes down to an issue, I usually come down on the side of the consensus opinion on Wall Street, because they're right. What you gonna do? Not really. We are here scalping for a few ticks, not investing. Ian, this is a discussion we haven't had for a while, but in my opinion, you have to understand what the market is doing. Okay. Case in point, yesterday on oil. Okay. That move yesterday on oil, you know what? I think that you probably could have come up with a lot of good reasons to take that long if you were just looking at the price action. You could have come up with a lot of good reasons to take it long. But once you understand what's going on, okay, contract went down in the after the rollover, the expiring contract went down because somebody had to bail before they could hold it to delivery. And then everybody caught it on the news, and all of the retail came in, and they ended up moving down. When you put that all into context, maybe you might have said to go long. I bet there's probably some people here, or maybe some people in Discord, that said, let's go and take this long. I say that when you see that, stay out. Don't mess with it. When it becomes popular, don't mess with it, because the people are going to lose a lot of money, and you don't know how it's going to turn out. So don't mess with it. You know that context. That is context that was important to you scalping if you were scalping in the CL. Okay? So I would advise very strongly against the attitude that you don't need to understand what's going on with the market or the politics or whatever else is going on in the world, and that all you need to do is study price action and find the correct edge and you can make money. It's not true. It's not true. The market changes, and if you don't understand what's going on in the world, you won't understand why the market is changing, and you won't be able to adjust your strategies. That's my opinion on that. Even the Fed have warned that failed policies can lead to hyperinflation in the future. Well, they can if you're doing well and then you would started giving people money, then you certainly could have had inflation. But right now in the current policy, I think it's completely appropriate for the situation. Yeah, they bailed for fear of having to take delivery with nowhere to even store it if they had to. Hence, there was no low price. It was too low, simple cost of avoidance. Well, yeah. Well, I've been wondering, John, maybe they were planning on taking delivery and something happened. Or maybe, maybe something happened to their finances. Like maybe a broker made a call. Because there's definitely an aura of whatever it was, they just had to dump it then and there. Because, why not hold it to delivery and then hold the loss? I don't know. Maybe the storage costs would have made you lose even more money. But yeah. I'm going to be interested. I'm sure that we're going to find out, right? I'm sure that in a few days from now, they're going to come out and they're going to say, this company here named so-and-so, they held this many contracts and they bailed on them because of this reason. I'm sure we'll find out. But I think you got to understand those kinds of contexts. Housing market might crash. Well, I definitely think there's some problems in there. I don't know if I know enough about it to say that it's going to crash. If it crashes, I'm concerned because there's a lot of people that still have loans. But I mean, here's the thing. There's going to be bankruptcy, right? There are some people, some companies, etc., that are going to have to declare it's just kind of unavoidable. Right? That's what happens when you take on debt and you can't pay them. Then at some point you default and you declare bankruptcy. And it could even happen out on a country scale, although we haven't seen it yet. And I really don't think that we're even anywhere close to that right now. A lot of failed restaurants. Oh yeah, RJ, well, if you want to look for like places that are going to fail, I bet you restaurants probably one of the first places. Although I'm noticing here, at least here in Utah, we don't have like a universal shelter-in-place order on, but if I order food, I have to like pick it up like 30 to 40 minutes later. So I don't know if that's because they have less people on staff or if the demand is just really, really high. But there you have it. It seems like some restaurants in my area are actually doing well. Going to make one heck of a macro call. We will not have hyperinflation. The Fed will not raise rates to 6% or more in the next 5 years. I totally agree with you, Gary. I see this. Here's what happens. This is what happened, okay? You have these people, they're in high school, they're taking basic history or economics, and they hear, okay, before World War II, the German government was printing money and there was hyperinflation, and this is what inflation means, and this is how it happens. You're like, you print too much money. Or they heard about Zimbabwe or things like that. So they know the issue with issuing too much currency is inflation, okay? So they hear that and they think anytime that they hear about printing, their first thought is, inflation, okay? They never get the full story because that is only like 1/4 of the how does a central bank work, okay? And they never talk about the other side of that, which they don't really call it out in the Depression. You know, when you learn about the Depression in history, they talk about, well, the trickle down didn't really work and yada, yada, yada. But they don't really get into why. Why did the Great Depression happen? It was a deflationary spiral. The Great Depression happened because they didn't print when they were supposed to. They didn't print when they were supposed to. And so everybody's always concerned about hyperinflation, and they're not actually looking at the formula that the Federal Reserve uses. Because the formula, essentially, the way that they determine a policy says that they need to ease and that it's appropriate right now. Another possibility is tied to the repo operations. The fact that any bank that was holding paper backed by oil inventory would have suddenly found themselves offsite. So again, no price, too low. Hey, you know what, bots? I think that's a really good theory. Because here's the thing. We read earlier, there was nobody subscribed to the repo operation today. There was zero. Nobody needed anything today. Kind of weird, right? And the housing market will crash for the same reason regarding the Fed propping up. I mean, that's not a reason for the housing market to crash. Sorry. The housing market will crash because people won't have money to buy houses. Of course, you can look at the after effects of that. We'll see. Here's the thing. There are definitely some banks that have a lot of toxic loans on their books still. But they've been doing the stress tests and all this other stuff. They're about as prepared as you could possibly be for something like this. So I guess we just kind of get to see their system play out and see how effective it ends up being. I think, though, the banks, I think, are probably more than prepared to have to deal with that sort of a thing. I'm not so confident about um, a massive wave of large businesses going bankrupt. What do you mean you're wrong on oil? So what are we wrong on oil about? I was just reading. I really don't know what happened with the thing. That I really don't know what caused the thing on oil, other than that it was on the expiring contract, and that obviously somebody had to dump something. And why, I don't know. Bobby screwed JR. I'm still okay. This we're in an inside bar of sorts. When the May contract went negative, it showed storage issues, and it was bad. Yeah, well, he already said that one, right? I guess it could be both. I guess it could be like all of the above, right? Now I see another person on Twitter incorrectly equating loans with socialism. That's my biggest fear here in Canada now. After the dust settles from this debacle, we could see the bottom fall out on our housing market once the jobless numbers start having an impact. Yeah. No, totally. I mean, there seems to be this idea in the market that everybody's just going to get hired back again. And while a good many deal of people will, there's a lot of businesses that just probably weren't good businesses to begin with and just aren't going to come back, you know? The world never gets that bad. Maybe a $1 or $50 difference of the bad signs again. Well, the question on oil, I guess, is once the dust settles on this one and people stop caring about oil, does this have an impact going forward? You know, when they settle for the next month. How long does it take for that kind of excess supply to filter out? Is that something that takes a year to happen? What do you think? Because I'm still thinking like I really think at some point it's going to be a buy. When, I don't know. Well, it looks like, oh, not quite. Not quite. I could just take the profit here, and in fact, I think we did go past a pivot. So I think that what I should do is just relax for a bit and wait for the 8:30. Is there a way that companies that are heavily oil-based to create products or services, they can lock in this low oil price? Well, sure. I mean, that's where you want to buy the futures. But the issue, J-Dub, is that if you want to buy that oil right now, you have to store it. And I think that that's what Gary Rich is saying, is that there was, he thinks, and I don't think that we really know for sure, but he's saying that somebody wanted to take delivery, and then all of a sudden, for some reason, they couldn't anymore, and so they had to dump. I think that's what he's saying. But they could be related, like what John was saying about with the repos and everything like that. Like, it could be that their financing for that particular thing fell through. Like, maybe they did have the storage, but then the financing didn't fall through for it or something. Like, who knows? It's such an unprecedented move that probably our ability to know what it is before the journalists have done all the investigative work is probably low. So what do you think about that one, John? I think that we should have gotten out of that one earlier. I did realize where we were about to go down, and and I can take it now. Huh. Okay. I should put you guys on auto here. Okay.
RJ Wheel says yes.
He's close to you, huh? There's definitely somebody selling it, man. You notice they come up into it and they just kind of absorb it.
RJ Wheel says I'm in Barry a lot. That guy says airline companies spent all their free cash flow on stock buybacks. They're now too broke to even buy free oil money mouth face.
So?
Bot says nice spot. I walked from Fenelon Falls to Lindsay to raise money for MSMD when I was 11 yo.
I think it's really funny when people think that they're really smart because they can say something after the fact. Like seriously, how many of these people out here trashing on the airlines gave two shits about the airline industry before all this happened? None of y'all cared. Come on.
Bot says 52 years ago.
Go.
RJ Wheel says wow. Jokel says CCL should start storing oil on their ships. Okay, sign. Masiak says Seth why short? RJ Wheel says well we same age.
The qualifications said I could do that. I'm not going into detail about my exact entry signal, other than that it has to do with the open of the hour, the bottom of the hour. You notice that I got in at the 7:30. Was it the 7:31? Yeah, I got in basically at the 7:30 open. Anthony Crudelli says the
That guy
why
says
something is
airlines threatening
happening.
to file bankruptcy is a great way to panhandle for some good OL government money.
Of course,
It's like a little kid throwing temper tantrums to get some free candy.
of course.
Disgusting.
Yeah, and the companies that get that money are going to be better off in the long run, and the government will make money off of it. I think for the government to really get their money out of a loan like that, the situation has to be dire, but I think this is an appropriate situation. Now, the real question on this one, though, is like so many people need money. Should we really be giving it to the airline industry? But kind of already did it. So I wanted to read this Anthony Crudelli tweet. Why something is happening in markets is important, but I focus my energy more on the what. If the what is having an impact on my homework, then that's where the trade opportunities come from. The why means nothing about the plan of execution. Well, I tell you what, that's an incredibly insightful comment. Going back to what we were talking about earlier about how you need to understand what's going on in the market. And he's saying there's definitely different types of information, and you're probably more likely to be impacted by the what things. Is he listening? Anthony, if you're out there, I think you're absolutely wonderful.
Bots says good to meet you at RJ Wheel.
RJ Wheel says likewise bots. What do you primarily trade? RJ Wheel says I trade YM mostly. Some S.
Oh, you trade YM?
Scalper Trading Reviews says hello, I am also using Jigsaw and NT8. May I know what data feed you use?
Yeah, I'm using CQG right now. So if you go back and you watch videos that are further, I actually just barely switched over. And the reason that I switched over was because I wanted the tick, which you can see down here at the bottom right. So that's why I switched, because I wasn't getting that with Rithmic. I really liked seeing the full market depth with Rithmic too, though. So you can go back and watch older videos to kind of see the difference. But my observation has been that in terms of the reliability of the data and the speed of it and everything like that, that it's kind of a wash. You know, one day Rithmic will be bad, one day CQG will be bad.
JB says, what does CQG run a month for CME?
So it's the same. It's like $30. Seems to me that the data platforms are basically just passing on the exchange fee to everybody and it's not much beyond that. They're the data providers are making money off of the commission that they add to your orders, not the data fee. The CME is taking the data fee. So it's pretty much the same for everybody.
Bots says for years I only traded ZB, but since they brought out the micros I'm trying to find my way on S and to some extent NQ when S was slower.
That guy says I was always gonna say that Seth's charts certainly appear snappier than my TOS.
Well,
Gary Rich says when the dollar gets to 102 gonna short USD, CAD, if it gets to 104 gonna press the position. It will come. Oh Canada.
I mean, Thinkorswim is an okay platform, but if you really want to trade futures, I wouldn't do it on Thinkorswim.
Scalper Trading Reviews says cause I am using CQG for Jigsaw and Kinetic for NT8 now. Let's see any other choices available.
Well, so it kind of depends on your platform, right? But here in Jigsaw...
Bot says I like trading 5 lots on the micros while I'm learning.
You got IQ Feed. So I just tried an IQ Feed demo, and that data was actually pretty nice. But it does something with the process that changes the process priority of it. So I was dropping frames when that happened. I don't know if that's something that's going to be relevant to anybody else, but there you have it. I assume that you want to know because you want to do some sort of a series, right? And then there's the trade of A1. So those 1, 2, 3, 4, probably the biggest one. I'm not familiar with Gain or really any of these other ones. Well, it looks like maybe I got out a little too early there on that one, but that's okay. They were just getting a little bit too close to my spot. OPEC said to rush to organize a conference call for ministers on Tuesday. Okay. I took 2 trades and I took a little bit off of both of them. Certainly not as much as I could have. This one that I'm looking at right now, I'm kind of thinking I don't think that I should have taken it off. But it's just, yeah, I don't know.
RJ Wheel says good way to learn. Learning never stops.
It seems to me that we're in an area where it's kind of difficult to get a really good position and a read on things.
Bots says half the dollar risk of the full-size contract with the added benefit of being able to scale in and out.
Oh, yeah. Well, from all of the research that I've done, I tell you, one thing that really helps you is if you're able to take multiple contracts and then take some profits on the other contracts and give yourself more room to let the rest run, that can be a really significant advantage, especially on ES.
Bots says on a 5 lot that is.
See, I definitely, oh man. I mean, I suppose they might go back up there and just turn back around really quickly, but for the time being, it looks like that my read was right. It's just that, like, the kind of trade that I'm trying to make, that sort of a move is supposed to be insignificant, right? So are we really in a good spot to take that trade? I don't know.
That guy says bots. Is the commissions also exactly half? Gary Rich says check you margin requirements. They've jumped and will keep rising from the firm you are with.
For the people that I'm with, the margins pretty much went back down to where they were, I think. So commission for micros is about $1. So you do pay more in commissions, but it's not, if you have a good strategy, it's not going to be a significant thing.
RJ Wheel says margins are back to normal.
Bot says not really at that guy the little more.
Yeah. So they definitely hit the stop. The problem is that's exactly where they might just turn back down.
Daniel K says for interactive brokers they're still high, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I don't think that anybody's really charging enough commission for the micros to really worry about it. What you should be worried about is, does the platform and the software...
Bot says NinjaTrader brokerage is still 2x intraday margins.
Okay. Does it allow you to trade your strategy
RJ Wheel
effectively?
says amp return to
Only thing that
pre-corona.
matters.
Gary Rich says just prepare for them to rise again. We have not come out the hurricane. We are in the eye currently.
Bot says so $100 per micro.
$100 per micro. Okay.
RJ Wheel says 50 per micro.
I feel like in terms of especially the E-mini, I think we're in an area where we really just don't have enough information to know to really have a good handle on what's going to happen or what's happening. And I can't say with enough confidence to boldly say it on camera.
Daniel K says yeah, still $2,900 per micro at IB.
I think the market is going to go back down again hard or something like that, you know. I know there's a lot of people that were saying on Friday and on Monday, like we're totally going to plummet, and like we're basically where we were, and it hasn't happened yet, you know. And nobody pays attention. They all forgot. Those people, they haven't said anything. They stopped talking on Twitter. They haven't said anything, but I'm sitting here like, it's not. You said like be short, but like nothing happened. In fact, I made
Bot
money on
says
loans.
$50 per micro is base intraday, but NT broker is currently 2x is intraday, so $100 per.
Okay, so I do see them. I guess I got a minute here before we see where the hour opens at. But are we? I'm just trying to figure out where we are in terms of like all the different time frames.
Gary Rich says this is a snap back and a dead cat bounce. We will fail soon. Prepare for anything to occur, anything.
Well, certainly should be prepared for anything, right?
JB says better than TradeStation at the moment. Seems to be no day margin on S or micro S.
Oh, really? Banks lobby Treasury to fix coronavirus.
Quasar says damn, I wanna short TN again, but the last leg up makes me hesitant to short again.
The Treasury hasn't been all that interesting today. I do see that there is some strong buy pressure over there.
RJ Wheel says Gary, you are guaranteed to be right. Anything will happen.
Yeah, anything will happen. But that's not what he's saying. He's saying that there's going to be another dip.
RJ Wheel says I know. I'm agreeing.
You think that it's going to go down? I just don't know.
Block sell.
RJ Wheel says wild times ahead one way too.
Okay, so that's interesting.
RJ Wheel says or the other. Quasar says disappointed, damn it, missed it, lol. Daniel K says block sell alerts are what instrument, Seth?
That was on ZN.
RJ Wheel says Seth. So what happened to people holding oil contract that went below zero?
I don't know. I really don't know what happens. Does that mean that anybody that decided to buy just straight up made money? Like anybody that the one lucky guy that's holding the contract long to expiration, does he make money? I don't think that's the case. I think that when it goes
Quasar
negative, you're
says
still
they get
losing
paid to be
money, right?
delivered, hee hee. RJ Wheel says I don't know either.
Because when you think about it, negative, that's saying that you're. I don't think it works that way because you still, if you bought it at zero when it went down to -10, you're still lost money, right?
That guy says shut up and take my oil. RJ Wheel says how do you go long below zero? Do you say give me all you got and they pay you?
I had heard about that a future could go negative before, but I'd never seen it, so.
Quasar says yes, that is what happens, basically stopping the pumps cost a lot, so they continue but they cannot store more, so they need to give away oil, at least that's how I understand it.
Hmm.
Gary Rich says the tanker ships are gonna make tons of money with shipping rates and floating storage. It's contango. Look at tankers to go long. Scorpio has more debt to others.
Hmm. The question is still always, what's the next step? So the question I had asked earlier that we didn't really get an answer, and I'm probably just gonna have to do some research, but how long does it take for existing supply like that to percolate out into the market and not matter anymore? So they're cutting, but there's
Daniel
still
K
a
says
glut of
MES looks a
supply.
bit weak here. I am short.
How long does it take for that supply to filter out? You know, if you were absolutely going to buy oil companies, and I don't know if that's really a wise thing, but if you really wanted to buy oil companies, when would be the most likely time to start to see that? I definitely see it as a short now. I don't know about how far it's going to go. If it goes down, so let's come back here. The upside was 2805 or so. The downside is 2724. Kind of ballpark numbers, but 2724. Now, where would that put us? Oh. And there's a little point of control
Quasar
down at
says I don't know
2730.
either, Seth. Actually, this is an interesting question. I don't think oil can perish like other commodities do.
Yeah. I mean, so it could be out there for a long time. I guess to calculate
Daniel K
that,
says copy that. 2,724 it is.
yeah. So just to be clear, that is a place that there is a good chance of them going to. I wouldn't. It's not like a guarantee or anything like, you just got to put the disclaimers out there, right? Actually, recently they've been coming short of it. So
Gary Rich says 100 mil produced, 70 mil of demand give or take. 10 mil cut will not help the 30 mil shortfall demand. It's demand destruction or deflationary with oil.
So you're saying that the market has, well, that's not quite what I would have expected to have heard. I would have thought that you would have said something like they've produced 100 million and the demand was like 10 million, and so there's like 90 million of this, and even if they shut the pumps off right now, that demand would take X amount. But I think your number is missing something, right? We need to know that. What is that in a month? Is that 100 million they produce in a month? What is the time frame of that?
Quasar says exactly at Gary Rich. I think this is one reason explaining why Trump was very fast to say that they would refill the strategic storage.
Daily.
Gary Rich says daily.
Where do you get that number from? Can we look at it on a monthly basis? Because if we want to like really calculate it out, I think that we would need more like monthly. World oil supply demand monthly.
Gary Rich says the world produces 100 mil.
Bots says storage is the variable that they can't adjust over the short term without a huge spend.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that you can take 100 million and times it by 30, right? Can we take 100 million and times it by 30? Or 30 and times it by 30?
Bots says and they've
Max
maxed out storage currently.
Yeah. So it's 900,000 barrels a month. 900,000 barrels a month. Now, before all of this, what was the demand? Was it 100?
Daniel K says who manufactures the oil barrels? That's my question. RJ
Okay.
Wheel says bring back the muscle cars.
But I guess to go back to my question, we really would have to game it out a little bit further. Because you're saying even with the cuts, it's not enough and there's too much.
Gary Rich says the
supply.
SPR are nearly full, like 90%, plus they are not going to just shut it off. It's impossible. It's not like a faucet.
No, that's not it, John. I'm gonna find it. I don't think I'm taking a trade anytime soon here. Already moved down. I think that the opportunity in a short has passed.
Quasar says yep.
Oops.
Quasar says they could refine it and send it free for heating or gasoline.
That one. At the top of, it'll be at the top of on bar update. On like every other indicator. Like maybe half of them. almost clicked to close. Okay. See, like right now, like I wish I wish I was in position, but when I see it, like I'm seeing price discovery round starting again. So like that's
Gary
not
Rich
good
says
for
Saudi was
Spot.
undercutting their oil by as much as 40% to their buyers. It's demand destruction in play. Quasars says be ready, Seth, you gonna get an oil barrel instead of a Trump check.
That'd be freaking hilarious. Oh, we'll just have Americans can buy a barrel of oil. What would we do with it? Oh, that's hilarious. You have to refine it and stuff, man. Okay, so if we were to say though, let's just say this has been going on for a month. So let's just say that there's 30,000 barrels of oil.
Quasars says ha ha
out
ha
there.
ha. Michael XC says what is price discovery? Chop.
Price discovery means that they are initiating orders and stopping people out, and price is going to try and move into new prices. In other words, the range is showing indications that they want to increase the range, but I don't know which direction, and the risk reward that I get going short is poor. So I would have to wait for them to pull back if I was to try and take it again. Because the way that this one played out, the only way that I really could have gone in was if I had shorted right at the open of the hour, and not all of my qualifications were met at that time, so I did not take it. And I had these other ones where I went long and I went short, and they were both kind of short-lived. So, kind of looks like I did
Michael
okay.
XC says got it.
I don't know if the way that I exited those was necessarily
Michael
entirely
XC
correct.
says trying to move.
'Cause I
Gary Rich
certainly
says it
could have held
lots.
that
Let's see if a
short.
barrel of maple syrup is more valuable than a barrel of oil. I heard and seen the stories on maple syrup.
So anyways, if there's 300,000 barrels of oil out there, and let's just say that immediately today that the demand met supply magically a hit, and if there's 300,000 barrels of oil, that's just 300 barrels of oil that are just sitting around, right? So if we go back to what is like a normal thing, so like let's say 10 million barrels per day, right? Then it would take a month for that to percolate out into the market. So I guess the point is that the thing that we're talking about with storage is only a small part of the problem. The bigger issue is that they're still producing more than is needed, right? We're still producing more than is needed. We don't have anywhere to put it, so we're just dumping it. And when everybody comes
RJ
back,
Wheel says funny. I was at grocery store yesterday and had that exact thought. How can I pay more for something than this cost of a barrel of oil?
but the key point is that when the demand comes back, that changes the equation for oil, and the existing like supply already out there in the market's probably not a significant factor, just based on the numbers that you're giving me there and just kind of gaming it out in my head. But that could be like completely wrong. So I'm not an expert. I've never done that kind of a calculation in a market before, so there might be some assumptions or things about the way that I did that that are just completely off. Yeah, look, they look like they want to move lower.
Gary Rich says it will take roughly 50 plus days before demand can pick up a bit, not get to full demand. That's longer.
Okay. Well, when they say they're cutting to 10 million barrels per day, I assume that means that when we get to full demand, that we would be roughly 10 million barrels per day under what is needed. And then it would take roughly, you say roughly 50 days plus, so let's take that half of that because it's gonna, the demand is gonna increase slowly over time, right? So if there's 30 days supply already out there, and then there's 30 days for it to go throughout, so then it would be a month and a half, and then 2 more months after that. So let's just say when the demand starts coming back, it would still be 4 months afterwards in which we would be able to even think about buying oil, right? Four months sounds like a reasonable guesstimate. And should going down. Oh, remember there was a big order at 27.50 before, and look, doing it again.
Michael XC says maybe syrup requires 40 gallons of sap to produce 1 gallon syrup. It's not cheap.
That right there was interesting.
Michael XC says, but at least there's also a strategic reserve.
We're back. I'm sorry about that. 8:49. What is it about 8:49 that happens? Was it like that before too? Well, I don't know. Okay, we're still getting messages, so we should be fine. They sure selling it. So
RJ Wheels says tree huggers going after syrup industry.
So those guys that were asking about what does price discovery mean? Do you understand now? It means that the range is about to expand. And one could be one direction or both. But
Bot says, lol, I just saw the maple
risk
syrup jokes. You Yanks are hilarious.
guess this costs more than oil. Do you have like a whole barrel of maple syrup stored in your basement? If Utah, if Canada was as Mormon as Utah is, then everybody would have a barrel of syrup in their basement.
RJ Wheels says I think she shortchanges the amount of M's in him.
Right. I really wish that it understood a little bit more about when you see multiple letters in a row that she's supposed to hold it out. Maybe someday Google will program that in. Okay, there's definitely something happening down here, though. I don't think that I don't think that I should take it long there, but this move does not look sustainable. No, now we reached our limit. Now it's not going to read your messages anywhere. That's unfortunate. Also, look at rice as well. Well, I'm interested in watching the oil market, but I'm certainly not interested in playing in it right now. So maybe in a year we can come back to it. Maybe we'll see the situation is different. Unless maybe you want to get in storage, but I'm going to guess that the market's already bought up the storage producers a bit too much, huh? we'll get back into you could get into energy in other ways. And we can look at consumer spending or technology, short movie studios. They can't produce content, and when they do, people will go to see. Oh, when they do, will people go and see? I don't know. I'm certainly, I mean, let me put it this way. I have money with my stockbroker. I'm investigating companies. It does not look to me like I'm in the spot where I want to buy. That doesn't mean that there's going to be another leg down. Heck, for all we know, this could be like the low for today. Today could be like the lowest that it gets for the next 3 months. Who knows? But I'm not seeing the things that I want to see to make me confident in buying things yet. So I'm just kind of waiting. But I'm most interested in consumer discretionary and 5G technology. Where I'm looking. Oh, sorry. What's John saying here? Man, even a bar 2 it doesn't like you, huh? Trying to think, why would that be the case? Maybe it requires more bars than that, but it could also be. But that's one where now we have to open up Visual Studio and see what line it is that's failing. Because it could just be a silly mistake. Waiting on Hogs and Life Eater / Kettle to place in these conditions. Oh my gosh. Do you know if there's waitable quotes out of Jigsaw? I know there's a bridge available, but like a hidden feature, but didn't manage to get it working. I'm pretty sure one could build a quote board. I wonder if that maybe is a feature that they're working on with the charts, but I'm going to guess that probably, I mean, because, if you want to do that sort of a thing, run NinjaTrader and do the bridge, and get those things on the NinjaTrader side. Question on that indicator, why are there no, I just didn't put them in there. I really should have done that. I forgot about that part. I was in a rush. It was late. Like, I think you missed the story, but like, I watched the baby, and then finally my wife was done with her stuff and was taking him to eat. And so I'm like, okay, well, I got like an hour, 30 minutes. It wasn't a whole lot of time, Mom. So let's try and do this. So don't, because I know that John really, really wants to see it, and I don't want to disappoint him. So I wrote it up really quick, and then I was like, okay, I need to go to bed, and I don't have anything to look at. So even if it works, it's not going to do anything. So I just left it. I didn't even expect that you would have wanted it today. I thought, at least let me run it or something. But and then when I was all good and ready to fall asleep, I got a support call. So then I had to stay up until like 11:30. Looks like I might have missed one. Oh, no, that's somebody else. That's somebody else. We're good. I've been lucky. The last time I did support was a disaster. Wow, look, they're still going. Okay, so remember I said 27:30 to 27:25. So I think, so by the way, John, do you think I played that right? Obviously we'd want to be short, but I don't think it gave us an actionable signal there. It got filtered out. Now on that note, have we made a pivot low since here? Yes. The first initial pivot was at 2750. Oh, that must be part of why there was so much volume there. Crude move has done some psychological damage to markets. Yeah. Well, just looking at it this morning, it's still about where it was, though. A little bit lower, but around $15. Okay, wait. 2761. No, I don't think so. How do you figure? Because, yeah, I'll just send you a screenshot. Oh. Ouch. Did you see that one? I'm like falling asleep here, man. Wake up, Seth. I just kind of zoned out for a second. I was just thinking about that trade. It was a good short, but it didn't. The filters weren't quite right. Though I don't know how you got the price that you did either. You said 2761.75. I didn't even see anything significant about that price, so I really don't understand why. I guess confirmed pivot high, maybe. Maybe that's why you did it. Or why you would say there. Well, yeah. Close below. When did you add the ATR as a reason to not take a trade? It always was. Why even put it on there if it wasn't a reason? Oh man. It might be too aggressive of a filter. But the ones that worked out yesterday, they were. You say it is not. Okay. Okay, fine. So is being on the right side of the EMA one that you think you should use? The VIX jumped in the low before the storm. So what are we looking at on the VIX right now? 46.75. Oh, that's a pretty good overnight jump. We haven't been that high since the 6th. Oh, we were significantly lower back then. I mean, what I'm seeing is that the market has been wanting to sell for a long time. So it doesn't surprise me. All right. You're saying that it's on. I'm just saying that at the time the ATR was saying long. You can still trade towards it. Okay, well. Let's we'll change it up then. I'll change it up. So where's my list? $27.30 is coming up. That's my list there, John. I sent it to you in Discord. I just changed it to reflect. Mavix jumped 2 versus 8 and 4 versus 7 jumped as well. Anyways, I like when I'm looking out there. Well, let's see if CNBC is saying anything. I think that what's happened is that oil falling apart kind of created a psychology change in the market. I don't know if anything about the underlying data has changed. It's just that there's been a lot of bears out there wanting to short it and losing, and the momentum has shifted in their favor, and so now they're going ham with it. Just a little short there, 27.30. Look at that short on the ES off of the VWAP. Yeah, I don't even have a VWAP up, but yeah. Well, I mean, the thing was, is I had a short at one point, but then they came back on us, and so I got out of that with a little profit. And then it was the start of the hour, and it wasn't like really certain for me, and so I didn't take it. But now John is saying, well, with the way that I've been trading it, we're supposed to take it out.
Block sell.
Okay. So, well, all of this is happening. We're getting some really bizarre behavior in the Treasury. Where was that first one? Was way back here. Not sure what to make of that. Yeah, okay, let me rephrase that. Okay. I mean, another little move down would totally make sense. So now that we're down here, the next one, well, so it's really, I really have it at 23, but then the one below that is 26.83. I don't remember when it was. Where was? We'd have to go way back to catch the VWAP. It's there at 27.64. No, 27.57. And two more for the ride to 27.24. Okay. Well, I can't guarantee that it'll hit it. Although, with the kind of action that we're seeing, probably a pretty good spot. Probably. The question is, so here's an issue that I have, John. You know, I'm not doing anything right now. I want to sell it so badly. I know it's like I missed it. And I know I should be short. Even if based on the qualifications that I thought I was following, it wasn't a short. But now we're saying maybe it was. But either way, I know after a certain point, like, it's a short. And I don't want to get involved in it. But it doesn't fit the qualifications. So then I sit down and I say, well, if I go back and I look at it and I go, okay, in retrospect, actually it was a short. Then as soon as I realize that, can I take it short? Because it should be able to go a lot further. But then when you do that, it just totally screws you over, right? So I think what I'm supposed to do is just sit here and watch it. And it's so hard. If you don't mind me asking what software you're using, that is, I am so offended that you would ask what software I am using. You know what? That is just the people these days. No, it's Jigsaw. So I have a video on my channel, James, called "What is the best software trading? What is the best futures trading software platform?" is what it's called, and I explain why I use Jigsaw in NinjaTrader 8. I'm not saying that they're the only platforms out there. There's not one platform that is like best for everyone, so you should really do the investigation and figure out what's best for you. But that's what I use, and I explain why in the video. And if you choose to buy Jigsaw, we have an affiliate link that's linked in that video too that helps the channel out if you do buy. So anyways, TD Ameritrade. What else was no, that was the gist of it. I guess I had switched subjects before that too. Shouldn't I be selling it here? The way this is collapsing, it's like I've been waiting for a trade like this for a while and I missed it. I'm so upset. Could be easy to miss. Okay. Well, it touched 23.50. I did not see Dick Cray Cray, but I am seeing the turn. That last move down was so fast. This is gonna come back significantly. Daniel, another one. Wow, dude. Thanks so much. I'm glad that it's working out for you. Dan, how do we use the accent? Yeah, so there's some commands if you type exclamation point info, but we ran out of text. We ran out of YouTube live requests for the day, so it's not working anymore. That's why I'm not reading them out. I'm just reading them out directly. It's really strange how they hammerjack above and below the VWAP. Just don't become that dog who drags their butt on the carpet, it worms. I've always baited. You know what? I've always been a really big fan of the VWAP, but lately I just haven't had it on my charts. There's just like too many other things that I've been paying attention to, and the VWAP was creating a lot of noise. So I just watch it on the Jigsaw. All I really care about is if we're above or below it anyways. Yeah. Info. But it's not working right now. So come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow and do it. And you can change, it'll tell you, oh wait, why is that changing? Did I just have a little connection interruption there? That was weird. Okay, well, it all came back. It's a great beacon, yeah. Because the order flow definitely changes based on which side of the view up you're on. You know what? I'm gonna close CL here, just because I know that that's a lot of data. Okay, so there's a turning point. I'm not getting a ding yet. Yeah, there it is. So that one said long. That's Ace's edge though. Like that's like for 2 points. You already got 1 point out of it actually. So it was 29, right? 30, 31. I guess it was good for 2. It's kind of moving really far though. I don't know if that one's like a really great idea for a trade or not. I do kind of think that they're gonna flip here a bit. I don't know what happens after that. Well, we're just gonna watch it. I'm just gonna watch it and see what happens. I know probably I won't be streaming anymore because I really should go at 9:30. Well, I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna do it. Maybe I should stop now and go and do stuff. Yeah, look at that. You already got. Did you catch your Daniel? Did you catch your last contract, or was they just short of it? So we're like 2 ticks off. I said 23, didn't I? Man, isn't that insane though? I gotta say, that one is so effective. It's like I kind of feel concerned talking about it on stream. You know what I mean? Do you work from home normally? Normally, I go to the office, but we are work from home for the near future. So that's why I'm saying, well, I could take one from 9:30 because the whole thing is I'm just trying to collect this. I'm trying to practice the strategy, and a lot of it revolves around the opening of the hour. So let's see here on the hour what it's going to do. That's why I'm thinking maybe we should just shut down now. Lots of people watching. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, I'll do that and I can get ready. Oh, I closed it at 27:25. Oh, very nice. That's so good. That's a good job. And are you just using the order flow to get the entries? Because it seems like you catch in a really good spot. Seems like you catch in a better spot than me. With the ones that I've been taking, they fight me quite a bit first. Just doing what you done. No, you're not. I didn't tell you nothing. I didn't tell. All I told you was that all I gave you was a number of what the level is, and I haven't said anything about what all I've done is said that that's a target, and that's it. If you took it all the way to it or reversed at it and made it had nothing to do with me, you're doing something else that's catching those that are really good. Oh, we tried to get beans, but he was full. You dick. He knows that's going to get me going. Okay. So, yeah, I think we will. I think we should shut down. I will see you guys tomorrow, and stay safe. Hey, listen, I just want to say one more time, like with that thing in oil, and if the markets heat up again, when all of my friends on Facebook are talking about the market, it's usually not a good idea to be trading. Okay, like if you have a lot of money and you have an edge and you're playing it and it's working, then run with it. But otherwise, hold your risk really, really tight, because in those kinds of messes, our type of trader, the guys that are just scalping or midterm swings, usually just get diced up. Okay, you need new friends, and no, you know what, John, you are such a great friend, and honestly, if you were the only friend that I had, I would be 100% satisfied with life. No joke. Of course, you know I have my wife too, so there's that. And Win, please everyone hit like. I was only able to listen today, so Amor Fatai, not FOMO. There you go. Yeah, hit that like button. Thank you so much. And again, special thanks to Daniel for giving those donations to us. And I'm happy for you guys. All right. Stay profitable, friends.